Grassley, Ranking Member Feinstein, and colleagues on this committee, on the Republican and the Democratic side. It's a privilege to join Condi Rice and Lisa Blatt here this afternoon in introducing a friend, Judge Brett Kavanaugh. I have known Brett and his wife, Ashley, since before they were married, and I had the opportunity to work with Brett during his service in the George W. Bush White House. As Secretary Rice has just said very well, those of us who worked with him universally praise his work ethic, his intelligence, and his integrity. I visited with George W. Bush a few days ago, and we talked about Brett. He put it simply, Brett Kavanaugh is a class act. In endorsing Brett, former lawyer to President Bill Clinton, Bob Bennett, called him a strong advocate of decency and civility. By the way, of all the attributes you look for in a judge, what could be more important than good judgment? Brett definitely showed good judgment in marrying Ashley. So did she. And they're a great family. It's wonderful to have their daughters, Margaret and Liza, with us here today. Brett's parents, Edward and Martha, are also here. That's especially appropriate since Brett's first introduction to the law came from listening to his mom practice closing arguments at the dinner table. She was a trailblazer who went to law school at age 34 and eventually became a trial judge. Brett has said to him, Martha Kavanaugh will always be the true Judge Kavanaugh. During the process of this hearing, there will be more spirited discussions about Brett's legal philosophy and his experience and background as a lawyer and a judge. I heard quite a bit of it already today. And there should be this discussion. This is about a lifetime appointment to the highest court in the land. In my view, there is not a better qualified person to be on that court. Just last Friday, the American Bar Association gave Judge Kavanaugh a unanimous, well-qualified rating, which is the highest rating they offer, unanimous. I saw how he conducted himself as associate counsel to the president in the White House counsel's office, a job I once had in the first Bush White House. And I have watched him for the past 12 years on the D.C. Circuit, where he has been praised as fair, smart, and independent. He has authored more than 300 published opinions, an impressive number, and the Supreme Court has adopted his reasoning a remarkable 13 times, a testament to his thoughtful and well-reasoned decisions, and a record that few, if any, other appellate judges can match. Again, no one more qualified. For more than a decade, he has also taught classes at Harvard, Yale, and Georgetown law schools. He is a well-respected judge and a well-respected professor, and a thought leader among his peers. That's why so many of his former students, his law clerks, his judicial colleagues, and legal scholars, by the way, from across the political spectrum, have come out in support of his nomination. Judge Kavanaugh is guided by the Constitution and by the rule of law. He has said, the judge's job is to interpret the law, not to make the law or make policy. I agree. And by the way, as do most of the people we represent. Judges shouldn't be legislating from the bench. Clearly, Brett Kavanaugh has the right qualifications, and he has a judicial philosophy that is very much in the mainstream. Just as important to me is the kind of person you want on the Supreme Court. I have known Brett not so much as a legal scholar or a judge or a professor, but as a friend, a father, and a husband. He is thoughtful and compassionate, and someone who has a big heart, and the humility to listen. To me, that might be the single most important attribute for a member of the Supreme Court, the humility to listen. Throughout this confirmation hearing, I hope the American people will get to know the Brett Kavanaugh I've had the privilege of knowing. A couple days after he was announced, Brett came to my office one evening to discuss his confirmation, just as he's been to your offices. He then went straight from our meeting to serve dinner to the homeless through his church, a regular occurrence that was long scheduled long before his nomination. I only found out about it because that night someone recognized him and took a photo that got tweeted. And it was a photo of him in a baseball cap in this soup kitchen. It's classic Brett that he didn't tell me this was where he was going after meeting with me. To my colleagues, I know the man. He does things because it's the right thing to do. Brett's also involved, as some of you know, in his daughter's sports teams. Last season, Margaret's sixth-grade girls basketball team he coached had an undefeated season and went on to win a citywide championship. Way to go, Margaret. To show you where his priorities are, Judge Kavanaugh, or Coach K, as he is known by his players, has the team photograph and trophy prominently displayed in his judicial chambers. Julie O'Brien, whose daughter goes to school with Margaret, has another telling story about Brett. A few years ago, Julie's husband passed away. With no one to accompany her daughter to the annual father-daughter dance, Brett stepped up. That year and every year since, Brett has taken her daughter, alongside his own, to the dance. That's the kind of person he is. That's the Brett Kavanaugh I know. I'm proud to introduce Brett Kavanaugh before this committee, and I'm proud to strongly support his nomination to be the next Associate Justice of the United States Supreme Court. I know these are partisan times here in Washington, but this is an extraordinary nominee in every respect. Based on his record, his qualifications, and his character, I believe he deserves broad support. My hope, Mr. Chairman, is that, as was the case with Justices Sotomayor and Kagan, nominated by President Obama, this committee will report his nomination favorably, and the full Senate will confirm him with a strong bipartisan vote that he deserves. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.